So to access Power Automate, like you said, before I go ahead to dive into it, Power Automate, like you said, is a low code, no code automation process. It helps you speed up processes, automates them in a way that um, you don't have to be present for some processes to be done. Okay. So, for example, let's say we have I like using this example because it's very, very popular. Filling a form. Everybody fills a form now and then. So if you fill a form and probably you have some information, or you have a form and you have some information you want to get from people on the form, um, you use Power Automate in the sense that Power Automate can get the information from the form and place it wherever you want it to be placed, be it a document, be it a SharePoint site, be it an Excel sheet. It can be added to any one of these. Okay, so to access Power Automate, there are two ways you can go through. You can go through the office.com, navigating through the app launcher and looking for Power Automate. Okay, so to open it, you go through exploring all your apps. This is one of the methods you can use to open it. Okay, so I'm just going to show us the two methods. Just probably someone that doesn't remember the URL, because on a normal day I would just go through the URL, but this is another way to go through it. You go through your app launcher and explore all apps. It takes you to this page, and then you see Power Automate. Click on it, it opens a new tab. That's one way to go through to Power Automate. Another way is just type in make.powerautomate.com. Okay, now in make.powerautomate.com, it takes you straight to the homepage of Power Automate. If you are signed in, for example, it's telling me to sign in because the session I used has expired, so it's asking me to sign in. So I'm going to click on sign in. Automatically it signs me in because I'm signed into this particular browser. That's the only reason why it's signing me in automatically. Okay, so it sometimes takes a while to load because it's loading a lot of things in the background, so it takes a while to load sometimes. Okay, now when it does load, this is how your Power Automate screen would look like. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit. I think it may not be clear. Please confirm that you can see it clearly. A thumbs up will be good. You don't have to speak. Thank you, Favor. Okay, so now here it's showing us Copilot, that you can use Copilot to like ask questions or suggest. Like I can tell the Copilot that okay, let's just try something else. I want a flow that gets information from a form to a SharePoint site and sends emails to the, let's say, responders or respondents. I'm not sure which of them is correct, but I think it's figure it out. Okay, so I told Copilot that this is what I told Copilot, and it gave me, basically brought out a flow that does exactly what I want. Okay, so I'm not going to go through that yet. I'm going to try to explain what each thing is before we go ahead. Okay, so when building a flow, there are different types of flows to make. You have the automated cloud flow, which means it is it's triggered by something. If something happens, for example, a form is filled, a message is sent, a session is booked, just something that you don't have to personally trigger, it is automatically triggered. Okay. And then you have the instant cloud flow, which is triggered by manual, like a manual button. So you decide when the flow runs and when it doesn't run. Okay. And then you have scheduled flow. Scheduled flow basically is you deciding when you want this flow to run, how you want it, how often you want it to run. Like if you want it to run every Monday by 9 a.m., you can use a scheduled flow to do that. Okay. For desktop flow is basically similar to cloud flows. Now, desktop flows works with what is in your desktop. It also works with the cloud, but basically it's able to connect to your files explorer. If you're using a Windows system, it's going to be able to connect to your file explorer. Okay. And then you have process mining. It's basically just gets information from like a PDF. It's extracts the information and then it imputes it into whatever it is, or it gets the information you need to get, and then after extracting the information, it puts it where you want it to be placed. Okay. um so Microsoft has a habit of creating templates for every kind of what's it called, every kind of, pardon me, every kind of application they have templates for each and every one. So being a support engineer, I would not suggest you use a template flow. Because some of the template flows have been deprecated, so you might not know when you're using it, but you might run into faults and Microsoft won't be able to help you because um or will most likely not be able to help you because the person that probably built it has moved on from there, and then the the connectors they use are probably deprecated. So it's better to just probably use it as how you want your flow to look and then build your own flow. I just hope I'm communicating. A thumbs up would be nice, or something, anything. Okay, thank you, Benga. Thank you, Favor. Any questions so far? Okay, silence. So that means no questions so far. So these are all the templates available. Personally, sometimes I use a template to find out what I would actually want to do. So I might have an idea and I'm not sure how I want it to play out. And probably I know that I want it to start from SharePoint, like when someone imputes data on a SharePoint site. So if I come here and I type SharePoint, basically it shows me every single template flow that has a SharePoint connector. Now, I've used the word connector a lot. Now, what is a connector? A connector is something that basically, as the word implies, it connects two different services. For example, it connects SharePoint to Power Automate, connects OneDrive, it connects Power Apps, connects Excel, connects Outlook, connects approvals. So it connects various platforms to Power Automate or Power Apps or whichever platform you're using. There are also connectors on Teams. Just want to state that. So, for example, now, like I said, I just know that I need a SharePoint flow. Probably gets information from SharePoint when someone has filled an information and sends an email to the person's manager, probably an approval. So, if you want to learn more about Power Automate, I can drop a link for you. Let me do that now. I'll drop a link in the chat so you can go read more about flows on your own. I'm addicted to flows, mainly because I like telling people I'm a lazy person, and it helps me do my work faster. Okay. So I just set up a process, and it is automated for the next, for as long as it is supposed to be. Okay. So let's go back to Power Automate. Now I'm going to create a flow, but I'm going to use Microsoft Form, and also I'm going to use SharePoint. Okay, so before I start creating the flow, I want to create a form that gets information. I'm just going to ask for random information, and then I will drop it in the chat. Okay, just give me a second. Trying to sign in. Let's do the SharePoint. Okay, so signing me into Forms and also SharePoint. So now I'm going to create a new form because this is going to be just a test. So on this form, what I'm going to ask for is your name, email address, a phone number, and just drop a note. Okay, so I'm going to name my form training or Power Automate training. Okay, so like I said, I would request for first name. Let's break it down. First name and then last name. Okay, and then we have email address. We have phone number. And for the last one, okay, we have text. Just notes. Okay. Now I'm going to make the first name, the last name, and the email address compulsory, but the others are going to be free for all. And then I'm going to come here and pick training. Oh no, let me just use my SharePoint site, personal site that I created for myself, so I do not tamper with something else. Okay, so now we have the form created, right? And then we have our SharePoint opening. Okay. So on our SharePoint, I'm going to create a list. Now I'm using a list because all I'm doing is just putting in text. I'm not imputing any other thing at the moment. So I'm going to be creating a blank list because none of these actually work with what I need, and they're going to be too broad. So I'm going to say Power Automate training again. So basically what I'm trying to do now is I'm going to get information from a form. I'm going to use Power Automate to process that information and impute the information into SharePoint for us to see. So the first column is first name. So I'm going to change this to first name. Okay. I'm going to add another column. I'm going to name it last name. Save. The next one was email, phone number, notes. Okay. So we have email. Let's just add address. We also have phone number. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible so you get the concept of Power Automate. So I'm going to write no. Okay, so now we have our SharePoint. We also have our form, and then now we're going to create our flow. And we're using automated flow because it's going to be getting information live from the form. So as I will put the form link down, and then when I create the flow, we start filling it in. You can use any information you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be your information. I'm just testing out, but at least one person should put in a valid email address so that we can get an email. Okay, so I'm going to create a flow from scratch. I'm not going to use AI so that it will not confuse you. Now, I would start with when a new response is submitted. Why am I doing that? Now, I mentioned triggers. It's going to trigger this flow when a response from the form is submitted. This is what I'm going to pick when a response is submitted. So anytime somebody puts in a response on this form, we would get this flow triggered immediately. Okay, so now currently this is how Power Automate looks now. Okay, so I'm just going to try and use it, but I really do not like this. Let me be sincere. I would go back to the old designer. Sorry about that. I'm not necessarily a fan. I'm still trying to, because it's still broken in some places, so it's not getting all the information at a good pace. So I'm going to pick the form. Now it's going to show me all the forms I have that were created by me or I have access to. And the name of the form we created was Power Automate Training, right? So now I'm going to pick Power Automate Training. Now we have the form. The next thing is what we want it to do is when it gets the form, it should get information, right? So now I'm going to, so basically in a flow, you have a trigger and you have actions. So now the next thing is an action. You cannot run a flow without a trigger or an action. It has to have both of them, at least one trigger, one action. And I'm going to prove that to you. So let's get responses now. I just want to get the information from the form, which is what get response details does. So it's going to ask me for the form ID, which I personally do not have off the top of my head. So I'm going to use the drop down and click on Power Automate Training. Now, you can also put the ID if you know the form ID. The form ID is going to be somewhere here, but that's going to be stressful for you that's still learning, so it doesn't make sense to use that. Then response ID. So now if you notice, when I clicked on response ID, it opened a new let's say a pop-up, and this pop-up is informing you of the dynamic content. Now dynamic content is content that is gotten from previous actions that or triggers that have been on the flow already. Okay, so now it's getting the response ID from when a new response is submitted, which is the Power Automate Training form. So when a new response is submitted, it's going to get the response ID. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and I'm also going to drop the link to the form. We're going to test it as we go. Okay, anyone can respond actually. Copy link. So I would need one person to fill this form with any information at all, just for us to test this flow out. Anybody can fill it. I'll be waiting for the response. So now, since it's an automated flow, if I go back to the flow details, when the form is filled, So now I'm going to refresh because it didn't show me any run. So can you see that it showed me the date, the time, how many minutes ago, and how long it ran with the status of the flow which is succeeded.